Safely go live. There it is. There it is. This light is a little harsh. It's because there's no ambient light. This is what happens when you work at midnight. But I have work to do to actually pay bills. I can't always be here just talking to you guys. Welcome. Welcome to the Midnight Revolution. It's Gavin Syme. We're here live. Am I even on the right channel? It's late. When it's late like this, you have no idea. You have no idea what's going to happen on a midnight live stream. I'm looking at my camera. I wish I could flip this camera like a cell phone because I'm looking at my camera and I feel like it's crooked and it's driving me off the wall. It's on a tripod, right? Everything's mic'd up, but it's crooked. I know you there, that's it. That's all I'm gonna change. Just that. Just that. I'm gonna pull out a teeny tiny bit, just like that. Right there, right there, that's it. That's all I needed to change. It's a compositional thing, right? There needs to be a few centimeters of space on top. I should have a hair light on right now, but I didn't charge it. Good evening, Poor Dirt Farmer, Andy, Hoosier, Wakasoto. Good evening. You guys let me know how the feed looks. How the feed looks. ¿Qué pasa, Steve? Estoy bien. Estoy aquí. Tengo una vasitito chiquito de Malbec de Argentina. Pero solo poquito. Para que no seamos borrachos, ¿eh? Porque eso no se vale. Tenemos que ser claros de la cabeza. No manches con este teclado. ¿A quién cagaste aquí? No manches. Oh, manches. No, this isn't an English show. Sorry. I'm just getting off track here. My OCD just kind of triggered when I saw whatever. It's like, did I spill coffee here? Like, I don't even know what is going on with this. But I'm going to stay focused. I'm going to stay focused. That's what we do here. You guys know on the show, on the live shows, I'm always laser focused. Harsh light tonight. Maybe it represents the harsh conditions of the world around us today. I know there's not going to be a lot of you in here, but maybe we'll get a few hot takes, a few clips for the trolls, you know. Most of you are probably going to bed. Most of you are probably going to bed where you should be. I need to clean. Good Lord. It's the thing is I have a huge light, right? I have a 36-inch softbox on here with a light. And so I've been working in here all day, and now I'm seeing the dust and grime on everything, and I'm disgusted by myself. Have you ever sat down in your own space and like stepped out of your body for enough to look around and be like, oh, I suck. I need to learn to clean. That's the emotion. That's the emotion I'm experiencing right now. But let's be honest with our emotions, because today we're talking about emotional maxi pads. Who saw the emotional maxi pad video today? If not, I better show you the emotional maxi pad video, because that's going to be the kind of the kickoff. The kickoff of this live stream, which will not go for terribly long, by the way. Hang on, I'm going to move the chat over to the other screen too, so that I'm not going like this all the time because it's way over there. I need a third-person camera. I have so many cameras in here. I should set up another camera for you guys because there's plenty of cameras that I'm not actively needing every day. But I know you guys get it. I know you guys get it. Good to see you here. Of course you were never here because that would put you on a watch list. So it's fine. You were never here. No, you can't eat the pads. You have to understand that government-issued things don't solve daily problems. Government-issued tools, like emotional maxi pads, are to help you believe in what the government tells you. So if the government tells you you're not starving, you have to believe. It's faith, because you worship the state, right? I mean, if that's what we're supposed to do. So you have to have faith that they're going to keep you safe. Faith safe. And so, for example, if the government gives you an emotional maxi pad, you use it as described, you use it as prescribed by law, by dictate, and on the package. One and the same. But you can't eat it. Government solutions solve problems that government created. They don't solve normal, everyday, real-world problems. All right? And just in case some of you are not having any idea what I'm talking about, I'll show you. Let's just do that then. Let's go to the feed window and just go. Let me show you. It's only a minute and a half long. I would hope that you've seen it already if you're a subscriber. But you know how the algorithm is. So I don't blame you. I won't hold it against you. Okay? I think I have secondary audio through port 2. I'm going to switch it over. There it is. All right, just in case you haven't seen it.
Get really pissed that people that you hate have rights, like that guy over there, or that group of people. They don't deserve that. That's why there's a great new product coming to you from your elected officials that created the fear and crime that you're afraid of in the first place. Emotional maxi pads. Emotional maxi pads are designed to absorb cognitive dissonance. So when you have conflicts, like I believe in freedom, I believe in the Constitution, I believe in compassion, but those conflict with the fact that that guy over there that you don't like should get screwed over, there's an emotional maxi pad. They're clinically proven to reduce and eliminate feelings of things like values, compassion, and critical thinking. And there's an emotional maxi pad for nearly everything. He should have complied. They came illegally. It's an invasion. Rights apply to citizens. He was carrying an assault weapon. They don't deserve due process. Whatever party or affiliation you're with, there's an emotional maxi pad for you to help justify taking away rights, due process, and liberties from people you hate. And of course, my favorite, MS-13. Just put it right on and oh yeah. Do you ever get really...
So, that's what I did today. I'll put a link. It's also on my Facebook page if you want to share there. Here's what I do. All right? Here's what I do. And I've been telling you guys this for years as activists, as just people surviving. To the best of my ability. Like we need to be positive. We need to be focused on the mission, on the light, on caring about people. And sometimes that means debating, but going down these rabbit holes that just drop us down. I see we lost like 3 people just for the emotional maxi pad video, right? Because the whole idea here is to break people and their delusions of their state worship. And what I've been doing is experimenting with ways to do that really better. Actually, Tampax I know is a name, but when I first started recording this video, I said emotional tampons, and I had these. And Sandra was like, "You know nothing about girls, do you? That's not a tampon, that's a pad." And I'm like, "What's the difference?" There's a difference. People will make fun of you. So I changed it to emotional maxi pads because people would understand, and then I couldn't be made fun of. I guess a tampon is like a little thing, like a round thing that like... So yeah, I don't know if I have any women followers that can even explain this, because you know. But here we are. So that's why they're emotional maxi pads. Bao got arrested, that sucks. They're always gonna come for the activists. And Bao does know how to stir it up. So I'll check into that and figure out what's going on so I can stay up to speed on it. Always try to keep track of who they're trying to screw over. And yes, TM, obviously, emotional maxi pads. So anyways, I've been throwing these out there. And first I shared this, and some people are laughing and other people are pissed. So you can immediately tell who the statists are and who just believes. The irony is this video, this is why I love sharing this video. And why I was driving in the car thinking about this. I'm like, why don't I have a video that talks about this? Because if we can be a little lighthearted and humorous, but also kind of divide this wheat from chaff, red coat from actual patriot, liberty lover from liberty hater, it's so easy when you force cognitive dissonance. Because to be angry about this, you have to be existing in cognitive dissonance. If not, you completely get it, right? And so what you do with these kind of arguments is you kind of force this immediate divide. Let's look at the comment. So what I've done is I've not only shared it, I've got the link saved, and I'll leave it as a comment. Just like my immigration article, when people want to debate immigration, I don't debate people on Facebook. And so I try not to. And what I mean by that is I'll leave a comment with a thought or an opinion or my view on it. But then everybody's commenting, calling me a libtard or a leftist or whatever they make up, right? Because there's no actual argument anymore. And this is a topic I want to talk about today. And so what I try and do is just respond with something that forces their hand, but then I don't engage anymore, right? I'll leave a comment. And so if the immigration argument comes up, I just leave this. I'll drop you a link right here. I'll say all immigration restrictions are legal. And they'll be like, you're a libtard leftist. Then I'll edit the comment and put this link right here in it. And I'll just walk away. And sometimes these threads are people hating and debating, and I don't engage in that. It's a drain of your light, of your positive energy to engage in the algorithms game, right? So if I'm going on social media, I want to leave something there that's relevant. All immigration restrictions are illegal in every country because they're a violation of human rights, but in particular under the US Constitution. Immigration controls are fascism. They always have been. Walls have always been the realm of communist nations, walls around countries, that is, walls around your private property. And in the old days, people say, oh, back in the day, like the Jews, in the Bible, there was walls. These were walls around like little cities to protect them from like bandits in the night. It's not at all the same as whether you can enter a country or whether you can pass through it or whether you can move into it and live there peacefully. Non-related. So when people get into this cognitive dissonance of repeating the propaganda that the NWO has fed them, particularly since 9/11 and making everyone a terrorist, I'll say, nope, that's not how it is. Here's the law. And usually the response to me leaving this is people just saying I'm an idiot, I'm a libtard. And yet when I leave this article, or they just don't respond at all because it debunks every one of their arguments and they cannot mentally deal with that. So when they're unable to mentally deal with it and they're just going off, then I go and I leave a comment like this, right? Because here's somebody talking about, somebody mentioned due process. Yeah, we're seeing the absolute destruction of due process because I don't like somebody, like we just addressed in the video. Okay, and so people are talking about this, a lot of people are speaking up. I've never seen Democrats so constitutional in my entire life. But I'm not going to hate on them for that and say, oh, when it's an MS-13. No, everyone deserves due process. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I won't even admit to being part of the libertarians because most of the time they're just such hacks. I believe in freedom, in liberty, in the rule of law, which is defined by our rights. Okay? So people will come in here and they'll go off about Obama and Biden, just the same. These are emotional maxi pads, right? Every party, every politician is giving you these, and so I just respond with this. But look at the responses. It's hilarious to put this as a response. And what I'm doing, this is so fun. You can do this too. I don't even care. Just use the video if you want, okay? And I just leave this comment. I have it saved. I see you have your emotional maxi pad on. Good work. And they hate this, right? Why am I not questioning the dams? Like it's this gaslighting, it's this non-related arguments. Are you a child or an adolescent male? I see you just added another pad. And this is the thing. This is the problem when you can't reason. When you've sold your mind, you've hoarded your brain out to party and to faction and to feeling good, to the dopamines of winning. This is what's happening in people's brains. People's brains are being wired to hate each other. We should talk about that too, but that could be a whole video. You know, that kind of, honestly, we could go as far as to get into the quantum science of how we're wiring ourselves for all this. We're actually creating all of this. But I know that's a little heavy. Okay? You can't enter Mexico without permission because they don't play cute word games. Again, that's an emotion. There's an emotional maxi pad, right? Our country is committing crimes against humanity, acts of terrorism across the world, violating our own laws, trampling our own constitution, and spitting in the face of due process. But the emotional maxi pad response, because people are being programmed to be stupid, no offense, Steve, you can't enter Mexico without permission. Completely non-related. You can't enter Japan without... I'm like, okay, first of all, that's BS. You can totally enter Mexico without permission. I did it. You don't need permission to cross into the Mexico border. It is not a crime to be an undocumented immigrant. Sure, they follow the USBS, and you can get deported if you're undocumented. And the more the US gets abusive, the more they kind of copycat and like, oh, you're doing it, so we'll doing it, right? This is how fascism works. Fascism, like ignorance, is a virus. It is a quantum level virus. We're getting too deep here for most of what I'm supposed to talk about on this channel. I know that. Okay? But let me just briefly hit on this. Statism, fascism, like ignorance, is a quantum level virus. And what I mean by that is it spreads because when you have people, you can actually track this in a real world sense by looking at social media. If you go back to the golden age of social media, when it was starting, 2003-ish up to about maybe 2012, 13, about 10 years space. We're talking MySpace, chats, Facebook, early days of Instagram, Twitter, things like that. These social medias were places to share ideas with people we cared about or people that cared about us. And so sure, we would debate. We were a little more free to insult people, right? Which maybe isn't psychologically healthy, right? We're not in person. When you're face to face, it's harder to hate somebody. But we were still interacting mostly with people we know, people that knew who we were, that followed us. Then you get to about 2015, 16, somewhere in there, and everything kind of... And there was intentional shift. Everything changed to the algorithm. Before, the algorithm was like, oh, Joe follows Gavin, Gavin follows Frank. They probably want to see kind of what each other are doing. We'll show them posts from these things and a few of that because they're interconnected through this web. That was the algorithm, more or less. Then they switched the algorithm to make the most money, to keep you glued to the screen for longest, and to create the most conflict. Because conflict is how you engage people in a story, i.e. a theater or a movie. So by switching the algorithm, suddenly, do you remember this point? If you've been on social media for very long, you remember this point. Suddenly, you stopped seeing the pages that you were fans of, the people you subscribed to, the Instagram friends that you followed to see photos of family or girls or landscapes or whatever you liked, right? You stopped seeing the things that you said, I want to see this. They took that away from you and replaced it with an algorithm that put in front of you what they wanted you to see. Not simply for their political ideology, like we saw in the virus days of 2020, but more complicated, more nuanced than that. What they wanted you to see to make sure that you were glued to that screen and in conflict, that your mental state was in anxious, high beta, fight or flight. This is what they created. So through this, and then then the virus and all this. They've systematically, and this is Sun Tzu, right? Divide and conquer, divide us all against each other. But they figured out how to do this with technology. Are you following me? So what happens, the reason that fascism is a virus is that you change people fundamentally who inherently, I know you could say, okay, we're inherently evil, but with your neighbors normally, you inherently kind of want to exist. You want to get along. You don't want to destroy everything normally on a good day, right? We're still human. What they did is they swung all of this into a mental shift. When you put people's minds in a stress, fight, or flight state, which in a brain scan perspective is considered high beta waves. When you do this, you basically put themselves in a stress response, like a running deer, someone fighting for their life. I know there's varying degrees of this, of course, but mentally that's what's happening. And it destroys your health progressively. It destroys your mental stability. But also, by doing this with constant conflict and anger, which the algorithms automated, we build anger, suspicion, and hate. We did it with the virus. We did it with parties. So they've been trying to do this for years, but it all came together when the entire world's media was controlled by essentially 3 social networks. Not tens of thousands of news agencies that might have differing degrees of integrity and or bias, but 3 social networks, that is Facebook's network, Twitter, and Google, and the networks that it controls through search and things like that. By doing this, you reverse the concept of what it is to be lawful, what it is to be Christ-like, what it is to be God-like, that is to love your neighbor as yourself. And you flip that with hate your neighbor for the things you don't like. And they've done this by manipulating all these algorithms of us always being here. The TV, the radio, maybe they started it, but this is where that came together in a way that was controlled through artificial intelligence or algorithms. So by doing that, by converting everybody to a hate state, now you're getting into something that's a bit more complex for this show, and I'm going to stop at that, and you can dig more into it if you want. The molecules of the universe made of light and energy, and the driving force of everything, and the quantum realm that arguably is the creation of God. I would say it is, but you can believe what you want. But the quantum realm absolutely does exist, and it's been documented that it exists outside of time and is basically the fabric that everything is made up of. What's also been shown is that the way the reality, as we call it, that we live in has way more nuance than Newtonian physics. And the part we don't understand, that it is mostly subconscious, extends into that quantum realm. That's what we're made of, is those quantum particles. And so you can, on a very rudimentary level, take something like the law of attraction or something like that. But this actually goes really deep into the forming of the universe and how God made us, how we were formed from the dust of the universe, okay? Our thoughts direct what we become. And there's been so many scientific studies. This isn't like weird mumbo-jumbo hippie stuff I'm talking about. There's been so many tests of things like when people believe they're healthy, their cancer goes away, right? When people's mindset changes, not they want something, it's more than that. When they actually believe something, it changes. So what they've done, and this is not an accident, is they've used these algorithms to control us on a level that is quantum. I don't know if they know this or if they just want to divide and conquer, right? But if you actually look at this, and there's been documented studies of people actually using thought on a coordinated level to reduce war in a geographic region over a period of time, or violence, like successful documented studies. In contrast that, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot lately, when everyone is hating everyone's the enemy. It's Democrats did this, it's the left that did this, it's the immigrants. We're all hating each other all the time. We're using cognitive dissonance to give up our values. We're using these emotional maxi pads to justify any and all abuse of our fellow man. As long as it's not happening to us and our loved ones, then it would be bad. To give up any sort of love for our neighbor and trade it for fight or flight, fight for your life. Everyone is the enemy. And because we're doing that, we actually, with that thought process, are directing, not to sound sci-fi, but essentially the time and space to become what we are envisioning. Not what we say we want. Oh, I want peace and liberty for everyone. But what we actually think and believe, which is hate. Which this actually goes back, ironically, even though it sounds a bit like scientific-y and New Age, to the fundamental Christian principle of love your neighbor as yourself. If you have enough faith, you can move mountains. And caring about other people. Even if you don't say, oh, I'm not a Christian, I don't believe that. If we start caring about each other. And so I do these skits and comments and debate with people, but I try and always remind myself, look, these people have had their brains wiped by this propaganda. They're literally being reprogrammed into machines of hate. These same people 20 years ago would never have said things like this, and now they do. So that is a brief thought process that I've had lately of how we're actually manipulating our universe to our world, that is, to make it hell on earth by actually duplicating hate and ignorance and fascism. Ultimately, it becomes a virus that is actually being spread through social media, through thought, through energy, through action, and it's spreading everywhere. You tell me what you think. Okay, I know I'm not supposed to talk that crazy on here. We're just supposed to talk about how government's bad. But it's so much more complicated than that. So I'm sorry, guys, if I got off on a tangent there. But I still think that video is relevant. I'll save that in the Liberty Talks archives because there's a full circle here that we're working on. And yes, there is a mass psychosis, but it's more than just people being psychotic. We're actually driving, it appears, the fabric of reality itself to create. Remember that Star Trek, original Star Trek, where they were on this planet where their worst nightmares came true, and so if they thought about it, it would come to be, right? Or I think the good things would come to be too. But once you know that your worst nightmares are coming true, then you kind of can't stop thinking about your worst nightmares. It's been a long time since I've seen that episode, but if you actually get into quantum physics, it's kind of the same thing. The fabric of the universe is actually driven, it appears, by our minds to a substantial extent. That doesn't mean there's not a physical reality, and I'm not trying to get up into any super deep rabbit holes, but it's pretty wild when you start digging into this stuff. It seems like the kind of thing that they disappear you for talking about. So maybe I should just stop. But then again, they can't disappear me if I'm focused on the timeline that I need to be on and I'm going over there. I don't know. It's complicated. It's complicated. So I get that. But I think this is something to think about. There's actually some pretty interesting books I like books that get into realms that are outside of just our normal everyday theology, law, but I like it when they do it with science. And there's some really interesting books that do that with a lot of studies and a lot of science, and not just like hokey pokey, let's smoke weed and talk about the universe stuff, like books like Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself and stuff like that get into the quantum physics of this, but also talk about how we interact with it on a human level. Some people seem to be NPCs. Yeah. But really what's happening is they're literally being reprogrammed. And it's really, it's important to understand if you dig into how the brain works. Their brain is, and this is again what social media has done. Maybe we should have covered this in the main topic that I was just doing, because this is a revolution that's being fought against our minds. And it's being done right here. And it's being done with these algorithms that are on this very YouTube. Everything that's happening in your brain is a chemical, right? And so quantum science actually intersects with what's happening in the brain. Did you know that, like, in World War II, they would run out of morphine and they would have to do surgery on somebody, so they would pretend that they were giving them morphine and their brain did the rest. And they would do surgeries as if they were on anesthesia. Because your brain is actually a chemical generator. It can produce morphine, it can produce dopamines. All this stuff that people take drugs for is mostly chemicals that the brain can produce naturally, but it does so in balance instead of you trying to throw the shift, right? And throw things out of whack to accelerate that. So the brain is like, and then the cells of the body can make these chemicals. Everything that you think and do and every feeling you have is just a chemical reaction happening in your brain, right? On a physical level. So what's actually happening is things like hate and anger. And just stop and think about this. Things like hate and anger, your brain addicts to. If you're angry and stressed and frustrated, if you're fight or flight all the time, your brain actually becomes addicted to being angry and fight or flight. So these are normal chemical responses that your brain is meant to do at certain times, but they're meant to be balanced with the rest of your understanding and experience and all that. What's happening is through algorithms, they're putting us in an angry state through algorithms, through laws, through making everything illegal, making it so you can't work, you have to have papers to live, fear of being deported, fear of losing your family, fear of having your kids taken away. Everything they're throwing at us in the name of safety and security that then makes everyone angry, fight or flight, stressed, hating. Then they say, look, that guy did it. Now you hate that guy, and you actually enable them to do more of what provoked. So when I made the emotional maxi pads video, I was being completely serious. They're doing all of this in the name of protecting you from fear and criminal activity that they themselves created. Full stop. And just think about it. I should probably include that in the video too. And so as we talk about this stuff, I don't like to say that it's as simple as like manifesting into reality. No offense, social hippie. But as more of a science-minded kind of guy, I'm like, okay, that always sounded super stupid to me. But once you dig into how quantum reality works, and this isn't pseudoscience. Quantum computers are real now. Within the next 10 years, quantum computers are going to break all encryption ever. The governments are terrified. They're calling it the quantum apocalypse. Because a quantum computer can break the highest level government encryption that would take 1 trillion years to break, and it can do it in 10 minutes. And that's why they're all scrambling and why there's so much talk and work, and they're all racing. It's the new arms race. Because the quantum computer is a computer that is... Go watch some videos on quantum computing. It takes a while to get your head around it. A quantum computer, if this computer, you're watching this, my camera's a computer, my screen's a computer I'm looking at right here, it's ones and zeros, right? In the quantum fabric of the universe, particles can exist in more than one state at the same time. And there is no time and space. That is to say, and they've tested this, they've proven this, where if one particle flips this way, the other particle, and this is really rudimentarizing it because I'm not actually a quantum physicist. one particle flips this way, the other particle flips negative in response. And what changed everything is when they realized that it didn't matter, whereas normally you would be limited by time, like there would be a signal, right? These particles can be on different sides of the universe and they switch at the exact same time. So it appears that, you know, we're in this time bubble or however the world is created, but the fabric of the universe exists outside of time. And that's actually what a quantum computer, in some level, is tapping into. I don't think the people making quantum computers really understand what's going on. But a quantum computer, whereas a traditional computer is 1 or 0, and it does, you know, millions of these a second to make their calculations and images and video games and everything. But ultimately, it's just a bunch of ones and zeros. There's no intelligence or anything. A quantum computer, the bits, they're measuring it in qubits. A quantum computer's bits can exist in all possible states at the same time. So what happens, there's a good video on the Y-Files about quantum encryption. So what's about to happen, if you guys haven't been following this at all, in the next few years, this isn't some theory that might happen in a million years. The quantum computers are being built right now by Google, by IBM, places like that. And you can find videos of them showing them. They look like these monstrous alien machines still. Although I think Microsoft actually just announced a quantum processing chip that they're actually going to be selling. So these quantum computers will be able to take, you know, 512-bit SSL military-grade encryption that is essentially impossible to crack from a brute force attack, and would take, you know, all the supercomputers of the world 1 trillion years, or some, you know, hypergamous number that's unattainable, and it will be able to do that in 3 minutes. Phew. All the encryption gone. Now, of course, they'll probably make so the banks, I'm sure, are working on quantum encryption, but this has huge ramifications, because imagine all the data that exists that's been stolen, that's been archived in other places, but it's encrypted and people can't get to, whether it's Bitcoin wallets or secrets of entire countries. When quantum computing becomes accessible to people, those archives that may or may not exist in different places, I don't have any, by the way, but that have been hacked and things like that, but maybe can't be gotten. Suddenly, all that'll be busted wide open. It's going to be interesting. But we're getting into complicated things. Somebody post me a link. Before we go too far down this rabbit hole, somebody post me a link. Yeah, quantum computing renders all current passwords useless. I mean, a hacker with a quantum computer would be able to hack any password ever in minutes. That's the difference between a quantum computer. It's not like, oh, this is a new processor, it's way faster. It's a completely different, literally, universe. It exists. It's essentially processing data outside the known universe, but somehow we're tapping into that. It's pretty wild and a little scary. Okay, but yes, as we're seeing all this stuff, I mean, and the reason I'm kind of talking about all this, when you look at all this stuff, right, and how people are responding, just the absolute hatred. This is one, if you skip due process when you came into the country, you should be afforded no due process on your way out. For all immigration restrictions are illegal. All deportations are human trafficking. None of these people are given due process, which is required not only in a human rights sense, but under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. This is all illegal. I've documented it. I've talked about it on this channel. I've wrote articles about it. No one cares. They've all been programmed specifically since 9/11, when everyone became a terrorist, to think this is normal. This is not normal. It feels like we've jumped tracks into another reality, if we're being honest. When I was young, there were certainly political divisions, but no one talked. People are literally saying, I got screenshots and saved posts. People are literally saying they deserve to be sent to death camps. I support it. They don't deserve due process. They were healed. We went from the worst of the worst. Do you guys realize that right now, 5-year-olds are being taken alone without representation or supervision or parents into immigration courts to have to argue whether they should stay or be deported to their home country? Kids. The level of crimes that our government is committing, forging evidence. Don't get me started on the MS-13 hand that doesn't actually say MS-13. And you know, everyone's lying, okay? Let's look at an example of that. And so people say, oh, you know, you hate the government, you hate the BLM. I don't hate people. I detest injustice. But at the end of my day, I try to have a mindset of forgiveness to everyone. I'm going to tell you something that I don't know if you've ever tried. Maybe it's just me. Do you know how if you get yourself in a good state of mind, you start thinking positive? Sometimes you have moments, they could be called spiritual moments or whatever, where, you know, maybe you're having a rough patch, maybe you pray, maybe you try and breathe slowly, maybe you meditate. Does anyone else know the feeling where you kind of breathe deep and your focus kind of shifts from the current problems, your understanding heightens for that short moment, and you actually get a tingling, like the hairs go up on the back of your neck. You get this tingling, it's almost like energy flowing into your body. That you know, if you're praying, you might be like, it feels like the touch of God on your shoulder almost. Does anybody else get that? Do you guys, am I crazy, or do you know what I'm saying, what I'm talking about? I'm not speaking cryptically. I mean, this is actually a feeling that you get, right? You can get it on a certain music when you get into the kind of rapturous. This is when your brain drops below beta, typically, and you get into a more meditative, slow trance state, and your mind is more relaxed and opening up, and you're not stressing. You kind of, I don't want to say outer body experience or anything like that, but you kind of start floating a little bit, okay? This is a very powerful feeling, and if you've not experienced this, you want to, because it does help you put into perspective. But what I'm getting at here is that people always say, I hate cops, I hate this. I don't hate these people. They're programmed too. They're acting like machines. Even Donald Trump, who is a psychopath or a sociopath, what's the best word for him? I actually don't hate him. I've had a weird number of dreams of me being in the United States trying to confront Donald Trump. I have no intention of going, by the way. I've just had a weird number of dreams along those lines. Okay? And so you have people that are using emotional maxi pads, right? Like Our Country, Our Choice, right? Not to pick on anybody in particular in the comments, I love you all too, but you're programmed to be hateful, violent people. You're mentally ill. And you have to understand that. Until you can step out of your programming, everything's broken. When you repeat these lines that were literally devised in a government office, a government propaganda office, that were fed out onto the internets and used through algorithms to control your mind, it's not your country, your choice. People have human rights. Those rights are affirmed, in the case of the US, in the Constitution. It forbids all immigration restrictions, all deportations without due process, which would be a jury trial, an actual crime, the crime not being that you existed here. So it's all a crime. All the people saying, Our Country, Our Choice, I voted for this, what you're saying is I'm a criminal. I can do whatever I want. I can commit violence against whoever I want. It's not your choice. You don't get to draw a magical line in the sand, and everybody who through providence or birth is in that magical circle is subject to your psychopathic nature. That's not law. It's not your choice to violate the rights of another. You do not have the right to vote to abuse your neighbor. And that's what's happening right now. You can break this cycle, but people are so filled with the algorithm of hate of this at this point. And so what's happening, what I was getting at with that tingling feeling, if you actually sit down, breathe slowly for a few minutes and maybe talk to God or do whatever calms you, but just try this. Don't do it while I'm doing the video. Just try it later. Because I do this frequently. And it sounds a little silly. But you think about maybe people that have hurt you, but then you move on to a wider sense and you say, and I'll say it out loud, I forgive everyone. And mean it. Doesn't mean you won't be angry at them the next day, but you don't let the sun go down on your wrath, so to speak. I forgive everyone. You can say those words, but you have to really change your energy and really do it in your mind. Even if it only lasts the first time for a moment. In my experience, when you do that, you will feel what I'm talking about. What does that mean? You decide. But I know that if we stop hating each other, everything changes. And the thing is, everything is so filled with hate. The crimes that are being committed are outrageous. Mexico does not use the states like a huge ATM machine. The immigrants are contributing more than they're taking. They are the working class of your country. And if you're so ignorant of economics, if you're so filled with hate and propaganda, if you've been so manipulated by programming and emotional maxi pads to cover your cognitive dissonance and the fact that you say you want freedom, that you say you're a Christian, that you say you care about people, but you actually hate absolutely everyone who's not like you, that's why you're repeating these propaganda phrases. Like, immigrants did this. Like, he should have complied. Like, it's an invasion. Like, rights apply to citizens. And it's not just the right, it's the left with things like, he had an assault weapon. Guns did this. Everything to ultimately take away your rights and due process. That's what your emotional maxi pads are doing. And so you notice, I want you to notice the people that are hating on me in the comments. They have absolutely no ability to respond with any rational argument. And you see a few of them in here. I'm just going to let them go. You guys can have your opinions. I want actually them to see too. I want you guys to understand as you watch people in the comments when I'm talking about real things that are actual critical thinking, like, okay, I'm going to challenge myself. They're absolutely incapable of a coherent response because their minds are functioning in a programmed state. They're literally like they're hypnotized. And that's really what's happening. That's what the social media and the propaganda and the fear and the government lies. The government is spending and has been spending trillions of dollars to get this level of control over you. Most people weren't strong enough to resist it. And that's what you're actually seeing in real time here in the comments. You notice how all they can throw is little insults. I'm not talking about woozy-doozy things here. I'm talking about science. I'm talking about the law. I'm talking about human rights. I'm talking about compassion and caring about other people. The kind of things that when these same people are in church on Sunday, when they're in that programmed mode, they say they believe in. And the moment they walk out the door, they absolutely turn on everything Christ stands for, everything law stands for, everything justice stands for. And they put emotional maxi pads on to cover up their cognitive dissonance because they cannot function on a day-to-day basis. But what's happening is because they operate on just repeating propaganda phrases and things like that they've been programmed through, they're not actually capable of critical thought. And that's what you actually, when I do these videos, when I post things, when I see people posting crap like this, when you have the White House literally posting a photo of someone's tattoos that's been forged, that's fraud evidence. And anyone that looked at it is like, wait a minute, it doesn't say MS-13. Oh, no. And then they come back. This is the cognitive dissonance. This is the next day when the whole world is like, Trump held up a faked photo of this person that hasn't even been given due process as a reason for denying him due process. And people are saying it's about right or left or Democrats, right? But it's not. Just because today the left is actually more constitutional by 100 times than the current right because the right won and now they want to abuse everyone. But if you go back a few years, the left was rabid against the Bundys and the ranchers defending their land rights. They're dividing us on hate against each other. And so when you come to things like this, so when Trump posted this, he posted it as if this was the tattoo. That's what he wanted you to believe. There's no question about it. He's got MS-13, even though he's got I should be back. My apologies. I knew that was coming and then I got in the zone. So what you're seeing, to wrap this up, is you have the President of the United States directly committing violations of USC 241 and 242, violation of rights under color of law, along with his cronies in ICE, and they're doing this every day. This is just one. This Garcia thing is just one example that people picked up on. They're doing this to thousands of people. You have to understand that. First of all, it's completely illegal to be sending anyone to a foreign prison. That's cruel and unusual punishment. And this is easily evidenced by the fact, oh no, we can't let them go. We can't send them back. So you have people, the whole point of a justice system is justice. Now I realize it hasn't been that way for a long time, that the US prisons are more or less concentration camps also, and they're for-profit entities. But in a US prison, if you make an appeal, it can go to court, you can appear in court, you can defend yourself, you can have at least kind of a semblance of due process, even though most of the time people don't even get that anymore. In a foreign prison, you can't. And you have to understand that the CCOP prison is a death camp. No one's ever left that prison. It's not a place where people go to serve their time or to be rehabilitated. It's a place where people en masse. You have to understand that this El Salvador scumbag, Bukele, this guy's not a hero. His country, you see a lot of propaganda coming out of his country of his people supporting him. I don't know to what level they're brainwashed or if that's just the things that are being let out. Bukele is organized crime and a fascist, very high level. And that's what Trump is. You notice how Trump always picks up on North Korea, Bukele. He takes the worst of the worst criminals, and then they get together and say they're going to protect you from the worst of the worst. But he's working with the worst of the worst. It's not a secret that CCOP prison is not where terrorists are sent. They do large sweeps in El Salvador, and it's considered, even by mainstream numbers, that probably at least like 20-30% are innocent. But how do you even calculate that? It could be way more than that. When people are sent to CCOP prison, which is essentially a death prison, you don't come out. You can't contact your family. There's no appeal. There's no due process. There's no nothing. And they say they're being given trials. They're not being given trials before being sent to this prison. You have to understand this. They have, quote, trials that are like dozens to hundreds of people at a time. They're mass trials of just sweeping up a bunch of people and saying you're guilty and sending them to the concentration camp. These people are not being given trials. And so when you see disgusting rhetoric like this, and what's happening though, the programming, the hate, they did this, the immigrants commit less crime than native citizens. But facts don't matter when you're programmed. As you're seeing to some of these people responding in these comments, they actually genuinely cannot make a coherent argument anymore. Remember when, back in the day when you'd sit in the living room, you'd discuss the facts, right? That's how you argued. You had a debate team and all this thing. That doesn't exist anymore on the net. Have you noticed this? Like between a few of you, there's a few people that are like, oh wait, let me think about that, right? But in mass, everybody's a part of one side of the magnet or the other. And they're all opposing each other. And this is right versus left versus everyone, country versus country. The people that are in this programmed state, loaded with their emotional maxi pads so much that they can't even get their panties on, they can't see this. Joe Obama's doing it right now. He literally can't respond to me with any rational discussion. You notice that he's just putting gibberish. And you see this all the time on Facebook, where I'll take years of research on this is the reality of, the proof of what I'm saying, the history, the context of immigration. No, the Alien Sedition Acts, these aren't legal. These were declared void by the very people that wrote the Constitution. It was John Adams' darkest hour when he participated in this. It cost them, the Federalists, the next election. There were no Republicans at the time, etc. There's no debating these people. They cannot reason because their mind is so in a state of cognitive dissonance. They've had to put so many emotional maxi pads on to manage that and to even function through their day anymore. But they're just programmed. And we say, yes, they're paid trolls, but I think the intelligent ones that make actual arguments are sometimes paid trolls. Most of the drones you're seeing are not actually paid trolls. They've just reprogrammed society to that ignorant of a level. Okay? And that doesn't mean you can't come out of this. If you actually wake up to what's being done and realize that you're actually the one being used. Lots of people wake up. And so that's what I always try to look at the positive when I'm discussing with people. I might be hard on people when I'm discussing. I might call it like I see it. But I'm actually trying to throw snowballs at them that are really cold and that really piss them off, because I do hope they'll wake up. And I've woken up a few people in my lifetime to this stuff. And so everything, this concept of open borders are bad, all of this was invented. Most of it was invented. And if the people repeating this crap took even a little bit, I know there's a lot of people I talk to that still can have a reasoned discussion that are like, oh no, we can't have an open border. I get that. But I've not lost the plot. It's you that's lost the plot. And pretty soon you're going to be a mindless drone, just like Joe Obama is, because you're letting yourself be programmed. Okay? We can't have an open border. That's an emotional maxi pad. That's all it is. Because you say, I believe in the Fourth Amendment. I believe I have the right to travel. I shouldn't have to present papers to move about freely. And then you say, oh, but that guy does. So you've entered into a state of cognitive dissonance. Hypocrisy is usually what cognitive dissonance is. And then what happens is you have to justify that. So you either have to change and be like, you know what, wait a minute, something doesn't make sense. Our country was founded on an open border. Most of the world has had open borders up till recent times. The idea of restricting immigration was absolutely ludicrous to the founding fathers. That's why the Constitution was written the way it was. They were appalled by the idea that an immigrant would even have to register, speaking of the Alien and Sedition Acts, when that happened a few years later. Even then, the border was still open. And so all the history, all the law, all the Bible, absolutely everything in the reality that you claim to be in says anyone has a right to travel freely. But guess what? People say, oh, there's an invasion. There's no invasion happening. The invasion is your own government invading your own minds and quite literally reprogramming your brain. And when I say reprogramming, I don't mean like just this loose thing. Your brain is actually rewired, and your brain can be unrewired. Your brain is working so fast on a chemical level that things can be rewired in your brain in seconds. And you can study this. You can dig into this. Get something like Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, because it talks about this specifically. How just by a shift in your perspective, your brain actually physically changes. And it rewires the neurons of your brain in mass to go in a different direction. You can literally change your own thought process and the reality that you make from how you function in your everyday life. And so the government, knowing this, that's what they're doing. They're literally reprogramming your brain. They're doing that with algorithms and hate. Hate is addictive. Fight or flight mode, addictive. So they're actually, the weird thing is this, while people like Trump are raging against the war on drugs, what the government is actively and intentionally doing is drugging you, because your brain is actually creating those drugs by putting your brain into these states that they're programming you into. It creates that drugs. So you actually become addicted to fascism. It's super weird. I know I've never presented it quite like this, but I've been doing a lot of research and trying to figure out what the bleep is going on. Did I switch timelines, or is there just really good propaganda going on? And I think that's what it is. Because I don't know about this whole timeline thing. Seems kind of movie-ish, but whatever. You could get into that, okay? But you have to understand that you're seeing people respond to me in here with different levels. Some people are completely reprogrammed. They're incapable of coherent discussion at this point. All they can do is repeat the propaganda of their emotional maxi pads that they've been applying for years as their hate grew to cover up their cognitive dissonance. That's what these do. They absorb cognitive dissonance. So while I made the video today kind of as a joke, it is a very good analogy of what's actually happening in your brain. Okay? And it's wild. You guys send me a link of what's going on with Bo, because I want to keep up with that and touch on that. It's getting late. I have to wrap it up tonight. I've gone for too long already. I know it's been a long... It's priceless watching these comments, guys. It's absolutely priceless. And I see it, but it's also interesting as we talk to you, as we're interacting. We're all just people. We're all just humans, guys. Stop for a minute and think about that. And we're all at different places in waking up or going to sleep. Some of you are in the process of waking up right now, and some of you are in the process of going to sleep. The idea that it should be controlled whether someone crosses the border is an absolute fallacy. That's been very slowly invented over the decades, but mostly since 9/11. If you step out, like just whoop, hold on, stepping out of the program for a second, you might need to do a little research. You might need to just think back. And you'll remember when this stuff changed. This is not how it was in 1999. It's not how it was in 2000. 2001 hit like a ton of bricks, and they flipped the script on you. And you didn't even realize it. Why? Because things were blowing up in front of you. It was a magic show. Now, I'm not saying they didn't kill real people. They did. They don't have any qualms about that. You need to understand that what we talked about today, I just thought I'd do a quick live stream tonight. What we've just covered in the past hour is a level of exposure on how you're being manipulated that we may have never covered on this channel. We all need to stop and think about it. You all need to realize that you can actually pause the game, step out of the program a little bit, maybe not entirely, it's not always instant, but when you're like, oh well, on terrorist, invasion, open border, how can't have that, MS-13, and you start like repeating all these emotional maxi pens that they've been stacking on your ass all these years, and you're like, hold on, pause, whoop, and you step over here and you're like, oh, wait a minute. Remember this when I was 10? Remember talking to the farmers and how they loved the immigrants and they could care less whether they had papers and they were all good people? And then you remember this and you remember that. Remember 9/11? Remember how after that the police said they had to do all this stuff to us and violate our rights all the time as counterterrorism? Remember that? And you pause the program and you kind of like, oh, let's Control-Alt-Delete and look at the tasks that are running. Okay, I know I'm using too much computer terminology. And instead of the program of my life, you hit Control-Alt-Delete and you pull up the task manager and it's an invasion. Invasion subroutine, counterterrorism subroutine, manipulation propaganda subroutine. All this stuff is going around, but you're not seeing it because at some point you got off the rails. You stopped being like Jesus, you stopped loving your neighbor, and you started believing people that are spending billions of dollars that ironically they stole from you to quite literally reprogram your brain. I'll leave it at that for tonight, you guys. You have a good one. Stay safe. Thanks for being here. And yeah, absolutely, save this one in your playlist because we may need to come back to this. And it's kind of long, I know. I'll try and take out the nugget from the middle and put it as a separate video, but maybe I should leave this one up just in case. And if you're watching this, I hope you can watch the live comments as well, because the examples I'm showing you here in real time are exactly what I'm telling you is happening, and you could actually see it in these comments. Peace, guys.